anywhere near the nuclear codes.
The transgender thing is incredible. Think of it. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And, you know, many of these childs 15 years later say, what the hell happened? Who did this to me?
The real radicals on that issue are the Democrats, where you can have an abortion in the 9th month. And in 6 states, you're allowed to kill the baby after the baby is born. The execution of a baby, because that's not abortion, that's the execution of a baby. You could actually execute the baby after birth. The wind, it kills our birds. If you want to see a bird cemetery, go under a windmill sometime. They do kill a hell of a lot of birds. Why do they love it? It kills all the birds.
Now, these are all obvious and transparent lies. I don't think any serious person believes any of that. Like, you drop your kid off at school at 8:30 in the morning and then pick them up at 2:30, and they've had gender-affirming surgery in the school that day in the nurse's office. No one is executing babies in 6 states or any states. It's not legal in democratic states to, the doctor just kills the child there, the newborn. There aren't piles of dead birds under all the windmills. Again, the guy just says stuff. But I guess what I would say about that, and he's been saying stuff for a long time, is more and more I generally can't tell if he believes it or not himself. Like, is there a line anymore between deception and delusion? And if you actually ask him to articulate just a basic policy proposal, say on childcare, for instance, he just cannot do it.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. You know, I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, child care is child care. It's, couldn't, you know, there's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including child care, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country, because I have to stay with child care. I want to stay with child care, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you.
The applaud at the end. After he's like falling all over, he does a Simone Biles dismount. MAGA. You get all that? Remember, the question was, what specific piece of legislation will you advance to keep child care costs down? Okay? Now, again, here's a contrast. Here's the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. She's the Democratic nominee. Here she is with her specific plan to help offset the cost of child care.
Under my plan, more than 100 million Americans will get a tax cut, and we will do this by restoring 2 tax cuts designed to help middle-class and working Americans. The Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. Through which millions of Americans with children got to keep more of their hard-earned income. So as president, I'll not only restore that tax cut, but expand it. We will provide $6,000 in tax relief to families during the first year of a child's life.
So there you have it. A little bit of a contrast. Now, you know, in Trump's defense, he was not on teleprompter. He was just riffing there. But I don't know, man. That's the quality of the brains right now that we got over there. Both Vice President Harris and Tim Walz are in Pennsylvania today, which is a must-win state for either ticket.
Anything's possible. All the things are there. We're all undefeated at this point in time with the opportunity to build something better for ourselves. That's what it is, to build something better.
But I should say, we should not discount Trump's very different approach at persuasion in Pennsylvania.
You can't take the chance. You have no choice. You've got to vote for me. You've got to vote for me. You got to. Even if you don't like me. You know?
We have to win in November, or we're not going to have Pennsylvania. They'll change the name. They're going to change the name of Pennsylvania.
Joining me now is the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, a state whose name I don't think is going anywhere, unless I'm mistaken. There's some plans in the works. No, it's not. No, you're going to keep it?
Yeah, there's zero chance. And man, oh man, do we have a stark contrast in this race. You laid it out perfectly, and I'm glad to be with you and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, let me ask you this. I've looked at some of the polling in your state. You're a very popular governor, and you're a Democratic governor in a state that is a pretty closely politically divided state. So here's the first question for you. If someone says, look, I like Governor Josh Shapiro, maybe I'm a Republican, I'm an independent, I'm a sort of centrist, but what is the Biden-Harris administration done, right? I think things are pretty good in Pennsylvania. I approve my governor. Seems like jobs are doing pretty well. The economy's doing pretty well. I chalk it up to a state-level apparatus. There's nothing happening down in D.C. other than things screwing us. What do you say to that kind of voter?
Look, I would say to the good people of Pennsylvania, yes, we've cut taxes 4 times here in the Commonwealth. We've made historic investments in education, in public safety, and economic development. Things are going well. We've got a lot more work to do, but things are going well. And I understand that politics is a team game here, meaning you got to have partners in this. I'm the only governor in the entire country with a divided legislature, one house led by Democrats, one led by Republicans. We've managed to get all that done. It's a team sport here. But it's also a team sport when it comes to having an administration who can work with us. One of the reasons why we're excelling when it comes to energy production is because of the strong relationship we have with the Biden-Harris administration. One of the reasons why we fixed more roads and bridges than ever before is because of our partnership with the Biden-Harris administration. We've got kids who are able to turn the tap on and not drink water with lead in it because of the Biden-Harris administration and their commitments to us. We've got folks in rural communities in Pennsylvania who are now getting the high-speed internet turned on for the first time because of our partnership with the Biden-Harris administration. So I would say to the good people of Pennsylvania, yes, we've made a lot of strides. I couldn't be more proud to be your governor and enjoy support from Democrats, Republicans, and independents. But I've had a great partnership with the Biden-Harris administration that's allowed me to do so much of this work. And let me tell you something. I want that to continue. I want Pennsylvania to continue to get its fair share from the federal government, to have a president that I can call and lean on when times are tough, when, like we did when I-95 collapsed, we had a president who we could call who would be there for us. I know Kamala Harris can be that president for the entire nation and certainly for the good people of Pennsylvania.
There's a lot of focus on your state, I think, because of the vagaries of the Electoral College. There's a lot of reason to think it will be a sort of tipping point state, a kind of must-win state. There's polling that showed today Kamala Harris up by a point. It's clear it's very close there. There's also a lot of nerves about Pennsylvania. So I'm going to ask you a question that you can't answer, but people want to hear what you would say, which is basically like,
okay,
what's going on there? Like, how's it looking? Is it close? Do you have any sense of where this is going? Who's going to win?
Yeah, look, I mean, it seems like maybe the one thing Kamala Harris and Donald Trump agree on is that Pennsylvania is the tipping point state, the deciding state. And here's what I'll say. I mean, it looks to be basically a dead even race for president. And by the way, it also looks to be an even race for the United States Senate. And I need Bob Casey in the United States Senate. He is an outstanding U.S. Senator. And, you know, head on over to bobcasey.com and chip in $2, $3, $4, whatever you can afford. Bob needs our help. But when it comes to the presidential race, understand that in Pennsylvania, maybe looking at sort of on a football field, you can maybe get 49 yards up your side of the field. But grabbing that extra yard and a half, 2 yards to get to the other side of the field is really, really tough. This is a tough state to compete in and win in. The good news is what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are doing is showing up in the communities that need to meet them, the communities that are oftentimes ignored or left behind. I mean, right before they went to the DNC in Chicago, they weren't in Philly or Pittsburgh, and I love Philly and Pittsburgh, but they went to rural Beaver County. That's in the corner down by Ohio and West Virginia. I think just yesterday and today, Tim Walz was in rural Lancaster County and up in Erie and rural Fayette County. They're showing up in the communities that need to hear from them, need to understand, you know, what they're all about, kind of kick the tires and understand more. And I think as Pennsylvanians get more familiar with the vice president and the governor, they are going to see them as the people who can help move not just our Commonwealth, but our entire country forward.
You spoke at the Democratic National Convention. You had a primetime speaking slot. You talked about what's been going on in Pennsylvania. You talked about also being proud of your faith as a Jewish American, one of the most prominent Jewish politicians in the Democratic Party, which features a number of folks, including Chuck Schumer and others. I want to just get your reaction to something that the Donald Trump says a lot about Jewish Americans, which is that they're crazy. They need to get their head examined. They're essentially betraying who they are if they vote for Democrats, saying if you had Democrats to support you were Jewish, you have to have your head examined. He warns that Israel will no longer exist if Vice President Kamala Harris becomes president. He's used the word Palestinian as a slur against Chuck Schumer to say that, quote, he's almost like a Palestinian. I'm curious how that strikes your ears.
Look, I think it is more of the same from Donald Trump. I have been the recipient of many attacks from Donald Trump, including anti-Semitic attacks from Donald Trump over the years, as have the people of Pennsylvania and the American people. Donald Trump is someone who peddles bigotry and hatred. He constantly tries to create others in our society, separate people out based on what they look like, where they come from, who they love, who they pray to. And it is something that is deeply offensive, I think, to many people. And, you know, not just as a governor, but as a father of four, I try and raise our kids to love thy neighbor, to care about their fellow man, their fellow woman. And, you know, we should have a leader of this nation, a leader of the free world who at least meets those standards that most parents try and hold their children to. When you look at what Donald Trump has specifically said to American Jews, this notion of this dual loyalty where American Jews can only care about Israel, that is deeply offensive to me and to many others. I'm a proud American Jew, and I care about Israel. I also care about health care. I care about our kids' education. I care about our national security. I care about a whole host of issues, as many American Jews do. And sort of going with this notion of dual loyalty that Jews only have to care about Israel, and by the way, have to have the exact same views on Israel, I think is deeply offensive and deeply troublesome. Donald Trump sort of fails that test that parents set for their kids. He has failed the test as commander-in-chief before. We do not want to hand him the keys back to the White House where he can continue to try and divide us, offend people, and spew more hatred and bigotry in our society.
You've got a state where early voting starts very soon, September 16th, if I'm not mistaken. It's a state, you know, 4 years ago, you and I spoke a number of times in that period, in the run-up to the election, after the election, serving as Attorney General for the state of Pennsylvania. And one of the things you had to do was go into court and basically preserve the kind of integrity of the state's